People love to believe fear protects them, that it's some kind of shield. But in reality, it's nothing more than a cage. Fear is clever, though. It whispers in your ear, tells you that it's there to keep you safe, to stop you from stepping off the ledge. And so, you listen. You let it guide you, control you, keep you small. But the joke is on you, because while you think fear is keeping you alive, it's only keeping you from living. Every decision you make through the lens of fear strips you of power, of freedom. And the real cruelty? You do it willingly. Giving power to your fears is like feeding a beast that grows with every meal. The more you give, the larger it gets. And before long, it looms over you, blocking out the light, distorting your vision of the world. Fear becomes the puppeteer, pulling your strings, while you convince yourself you're in control. But there's no control in fear, only surrender. You hand over the reins of your life to something that only knows how to take. And once fear has its grip on you, it never lets go. It feeds on your hesitation, your doubts, growing stronger while you shrink into the shadows of your own life. There's a twisted irony in fear. The more you try to avoid it, the more power you give it. Every time you step back from the edge, every time you let fear decide for you, it becomes the master. And you become the slave. A slave to the voices in your head that tell you it's safer here, safer in the known, in the comfortable. Fear has a way of making the unknown look like a monster, when in reality, it's your fear that's the real beast. The things you're afraid of, they're not the threat. Your fear is. It paralyzes you, turns your dreams into dust, your potential into regret. And the worst part, you never see it coming. It's slow, subtle. One small compromise, one quiet retreat, and before you know it, fear owns you. The key to breaking fear's grip is not in fighting it. Fear feeds on your struggle, thrives on your resistance. No, the real power comes in ignoring it, in walking into the storm with your eyes wide open, daring fear to do its worst. Fear demands your attention, your obedience, but the moment you stop giving it what it wants, it loses its power. It's not some invincible force. It's a shadow, growing and shrinking based on how much light you're willing to shine on it. Step into that darkness, not with hesitation, but with defiance. Let the fear roar, let it gnash its teeth, but do not stop moving forward. Fear is powerless without your submission. Most people live their lives as prisoners of their own minds, their own fears. They build walls, thinking they're protecting themselves, when in reality, all they've done is create a fortress of isolation, where their fears reign supreme. They think avoiding the things that scare them keeps them safe, but avoidance is the slowest form of suicide. You can't avoid fear forever. It's everywhere, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But here's the secret. It's only as strong as you let it be. Fear may knock on the door, but you decide if it gets to come in. It's time to stop giving power to your fears. Stop feeding them with your attention, your energy. Fear is a parasite, a leech, draining you of everything that makes you alive. Every time you hesitate, every time you step back from something that scares you, you feed it. And it grows, it festers. But the moment you stop caring, the moment you walk straight into the fire without flinching, fear has nothing left. You strip it of its lifeblood. Fear thrives on the idea that you'll always retreat, always step away. But when you don't, when you press forward despite its snarls, that's when you win. That's when you reclaim the power that fear stole from you. So, walk into the darkness. Embrace it. Face the thing that terrifies you, not because you're fearless, but because you're done giving fear control over your life. Fear is not a wall. It's not an impenetrable force. It's a door. And on the other side of that door is everything you've ever wanted, everything you've ever been too afraid to reach for. The only thing stopping you is your willingness to keep the door shut. Open it. Step through. Let fear howl all at once, but know this: fear is nothing without you. The moment you decide to stop listening, stop letting it make the choices, is the moment fear becomes powerless. And that's the real power: to live unshackled by fear, to move through the world knowing that fear can scream, it can shout, but it can never stop you. Once you stop giving it that control, once you stop handing over your life to a mere illusion, you become something else, something unstoppable, something untouchable. Fear will always be there, lurking, waiting. But as long as you remember that it's nothing, without your permission, you remain in control. Fear is the ultimate weapon, if you let it be. But if you take it away, if you remove its fangs, all that's left is silence. Think about it. The only reason fear holds any power is because it's convinced your mind to limit itself. It tells you that stepping outside those bars is dangerous, that thinking bigger, dreaming further, will lead to ruin. But the real ruin? It's letting your imagination rot in that cage. Every time fear whispers in your ear, you tighten the chains yourself. You've locked up your own mind, convinced that the worst is just around the corner, when in reality, the only thing lurking there is freedom. Freedom you're too afraid to seize. Fear thrives in confined spaces. It grows when the mind shrinks. And that's the real tragedy of it all. People live their whole lives trapped in mental cages, too afraid to see how vast the world could be if they just let their imagination out. Fear conditions you to think small, to stay safe, to avoid risk, but it's not risk you're avoiding. It's life. Real life, unbounded by fear's limitations, lived at the edge of your imagination. But as long as you stay afraid, you stay trapped, living someone else's version of reality, because your mind no longer has the strength to create its own. Fear is a parasite, feeding off potential, siphoning off creativity, until all that's left is a hollow shell, stuck in survival mode. You tell yourself you're being practical, realistic, but that's the language of fear, the language of a caged mind. Fear convinces you that the safest place is within the limits it sets for you. But the mind wasn't meant to be safe. It wasn't meant to be contained. Your imagination is a weapon, but fear dulls its edge, makes you forget what it's capable of. It keeps you caged because it knows what would happen if you ever let your imagination loose. Chaos, creation, and power that fear can't control. The cage of fear isn't locked. It never was. It's just a door you've been too afraid to open. Every time fear tells you to stay small, it's begging you not to realize that the bars are an illusion. You've been conditioned to see boundaries where there are none. Your imagination could tear those bars apart in an instant if only you'd let it. But fear keeps you docile, keeps you believing that the cage is for your protection. It keeps your imagination from running wild, because fear knows that an unleashed mind is a mind that can't be controlled. What's worse, fear isn't just the cage, it's also the blindfold. It keeps you from seeing how vast your imagination really is, how far it could take you if you stopped letting fear call the shots. You live in a world of limits, of rules, because fear has taught you to fear the unknown, to fear what lies beyond those bars. But here's the thing: your imagination, your creativity, your vision, they were never meant to stay inside the lines. Fear convinces you that the unknown is a threat, but it's not. It's your liberation. The real threat is staying where you are, trapped inside a mind that no longer dares to dream. So, you want freedom? Then stop letting fear cage your imagination. Stop allowing it to dictate the size of your thoughts, the reach of your dreams. The moment you stop feeding fear, stop letting it define the borders of your mind, is the moment those bars crumble. Let your imagination roam free. Let it conjure the impossible, the unthinkable. Fear has kept you small for too long. It's time to remember who you are without those chains, without that cage. Because a mind unchained is a mind that can create, destroy, and rebuild worlds. Fear knows this. That's why it keeps you bound. It's terrified of what you might become if you let your imagination out of the cage.